To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Today we have Misha Collins returning to the CW. We have What Peter Sellers Has to Do with Moon Knight, Jamie Lee Curtis cosplaying, and of course our deep dive into the second half of the second season of Pennyworth, all here on The Experience. So that's our show line today. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And of course, afterwards we are followed by Rex and John with some exciting collectibles on Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. Kind of an on-the-nose title there. And I know they've got some fun stuff today, including a Star Wars Adventure Annual signed by John Jackson Miller, a Christopher Priest signed copy of Draculina, and a 6.5 graded copy of Marvel Spotlight number 28, which features early appearance of the Moon Knight. So stick around for that, plus a lot of spam talk on that show. They talk spam? Explain that one.
They're obsessed with compound meats. Spam, the taco truck showing up to the DF office, bologna, something called Taylor ham.
Do they know what deviled ham is?
I don't know. I will ask them.
Yeah.
I assume it's ham featured in We Have Demons by Scott Snyder, but I don't know that to be true.
No. Deviled ham is actually a sandwich spread you can get.
Meat shouldn't come in spread form.
But it does.
I will die on this hill. Meat should not come in spread form.
But it does.
That doesn't mean you can also kill people, Dan. Doesn't mean you should.
Some people deserve to die.
All right, Norman Bates.
Probably shouldn't say that live on the air. All right, folks. There is some interesting news hitting the wave today. For fans of Supernatural, actor Misha Collins, formerly of Supernatural, where he played the Angel. I cannot think of the character's name. Castile, I think it is. Anyway, he's been tapped to play Harvey Dent, of all people, the Two-Face in the upcoming Gotham Knights pilot for the CW. Now, it's still pilot. Now, it hasn't been picked up yet. But this is coming from the writers of the Batwoman series. It's based in that Gotham after Bruce Wayne has been murdered. Wayne's rebellious adopted son forges an unlikely alliance with the children of Batman's enemies when they all are framed for killing the Caped Crusader. As the city's most wanted criminals, the Renegades band misfits must fight to clear their name. So they get together to clear their names and become the Gotham Knights. Collins, of course, is going to be playing Two-Face, but also in the series are going to be Fallon Smythe, Tyler DiChiara, Oscar Morgan, Olivia Rose Keegan, and Navia Robinson. Now, this is from Greg Berlanti. So it's got, Sarah Schechter and stuff like that involved. But they've brought Danny Cannon in as an executive producer and director for the first episode. And Danny Cannon, of course, is one of the co-creators of Gotham and Pennyworth. So he knows Gotham really well. He knows that pantheon. And also he comes up with some pretty crazy stuff, as we'll find out in when we talk about Pennyworth later on this day's episode. So, but the thing is with this, the CW is currently up for sale. It's owned by Warner Brothers right now, but then it's going to, go to somebody else. Will Warner Brothers keep putting CW shows out? Will they still do the Arrowverse? Will The Flash, which just got picked up for season 9, continue? Stuff like that. Or will it move these things to HBO Max? It's going to be interesting to find out. Kyle says this show sounds like Detective Comics, the Menendez brothers. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I expect it to be absolutely BS crazy. Just amazing. They should just call it bad shit. Gotham bad shit. All right. Speaking of crazy, Moon Knight comes out next week. And Oscar Isaac is doing press conferences hyping the series. And he talked about the Stephen Grant persona. Now, we've had a lot of fun picking on the accent and stuff like that. But Oscar Isaac is the one that actually came up with wanting to make him British. And the portrayal that he did it, pitched it to Kevin Feige, and Feige was a little nervous about it, but went, all right, go for it. And there are other moments like that in the MCU where somebody pitches something to Kevin Feige and he's not too sure about it, but he lets him go for it and it works out well. Like David Harbour pitched the idea of singing to Florence Pugh in Black Widow the song Miss America Pie, or Miss America, or Bye Bye American Pie. And that ended up being put into the beginning and became an interesting part of the show or the movie. So that was David Harbour. Kevin Feige wasn't sure about it, but let him go for it anyway, and it worked out. So this is what he did. Now, Isaac, though, said that his influences are kind of unique for this persona. Not for Mark Spector or for Moon Knight or Mr. Knight, but for Stephen Grant. He says, there's just so much of the humor that I just find so funny. I thought there's an opportunity here to maybe make something. What if we make him English? What if Peter Sellers was approached with a Marvel project? What would he do? Okay. The idea of Peter Sellers in a Marvel project would have been fantastic. But another big influence, and this one kind of freaked me out because if you're familiar, there was Ricky Gervais used to do this podcast with Stephen. I don't remember the gentleman's name. He's a really tall actor, and also a guy named Carl Pilkington. And they did this podcast. It was actually Dan Fraga worked on it, and they would basically, this podcast, they would then animate it, and Carl Pilkington was kind of the big thing from it, and then he went on to get his own series called An Idiot Abroad, where he would travel around and just, Carl is very funny without knowing that he's funny. Well, the series was another influence for Oscar Isaac. He says, I started thinking about that, and that led me to Carl Pilkington from An Idiot Abroad, and not so much the accent, but just for his sense of humor and what he doesn't know. You can't tell if he knows he's being funny. And then I thought about the Jewish community in London and where a lot of the community is from. And Einfeld as an area, and sort of listening to the accents that are northeast London. So that's where he's coming up with that accent, is from the Jewish area of London. And Mark Spector, of course, being a Jewish character, that makes a lot of sense. And then just committed to that and found this guy that it wasn't just about accent, but it was also about his timidness, but also wanting to connect with people, but not quite knowing how. So yeah, Russell Kane is a comedian that I listen to as well. I don't know. I never looked at Moon Knight and thought comedy, but hopefully this is going to work. I'm looking forward to it. So, all right, another bit of news. This is more of a rumor. And a lot of times I don't really run with the rumors, but if it's somebody with a really good track record, and this is coming from industry insiders. And I don't know about you, but when Book of Boba Fett was out, what I was hoping is we would get a return of some of the other bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back. You know, I'm always wanting to see Bosk show up, or Dengar, or IG-88, or some of those characters. Well, it turns out that these reports are saying that one of those bounty hunters is actually going to appear in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's the protocol droid turned into a bounty hunter, Forlom. Now, it said that he's going to be one of the antagonists in the series, and he's supposed to have a lot more screen time than he did in Empire, which isn't hard to do. I think he had maybe about 6 seconds more screen time in Empire than I did. Now, in the comics, the character is much more fleshed out. He's teamed up with the other bounty hunter from that scene, Zuckuss, and they work together. Now, there's no word if Zuckuss is going to appear, but it makes a lot of sense that there's going to be a bounty hunter working for the Empire, or working for the Grand Inquisitor, trying to track down these Jedis, because there's a lot of galaxy out there. So if you're paying these people by the number of Jedis they find, that's a great way to scour the galaxy without wasting all your brothers and sisters. And that's what all the Jedi hunters are: the 9th brother, the 5th brother, the 6th sister. So that's going to be interesting. Now, there's another bounty hunter that would make sense to show up in Kenobi, and that is Black Chrysanthemum, who showed up in Boba Fett. Though I believe he's only ever referred to as Chrysanthemum or Santi in Boba Fett. But in the recent comics, which are canon, now there's a bunch of comics that are no longer canon. And that's where a lot of like the Forlom backstory and stuff is from. But the recent comics from Marvel are considered canon. And there's a story that takes place in this era where Kenobi was on Tatooine that involves him basically having to take on Chrysanthemum when Chrysanthemum is working for Jabba the Hutt, and somebody is attacking Jabba's tax collectors on the vapor moisture, or the moisture farmers. So he goes after Owen Lars, and Kenobi has to protect him. Now, this could be part of the series. It would make sense timing-wise, but haven't heard anything either way. But it would be interesting to have Chrysanthemum show up in Boba Fett, create the character there, or show us the character there, and then have him pop up in Kenobi as well. Be a nice tie together without it being that big a deal. But they might stay away from that just so they don't confuse fans, because there is a big time difference between the two. Kenobi is supposed to take place about 10 years after Revenge of the Sith and 9 years before Star Wars A New Hope. And Boba Fett is supposed to take place 8 years after the destruction of the Death Star. So, or is that after Return of the Jedi, the second Death Star? I get confused, but all right. So, but it looks like if we get Forlom, that'll be cool. Get that character back in there. He looks a little bit like there was a droid in The Mandalorian. I think it was called Zero, as part of the group that busted a guy out of prison with Mando. So and then they used his head later on. So he looks kind of like that. So Forlom, possibly in the Kenobi series. And then one more fun story, and this is the one I teased in the beginning. Jamie Lee Curtis was on Jimmy Kimmel last night, and she talked about the fact that her daughter, Ruby, is going to be having a cosplay wedding in her backyard, or in Jamie Lee Curtis's backyard. Now, this is the second time Curtis has hosted one of her daughter's wedding in her backyard. Her older daughter did their wedding in her backyard 3 years ago. And Curtis is actually going to be officiating the wedding, but the wedding is a cosplay wedding. Now, of course, the question becomes, well, what is Jamie Lee Curtis going to cosplay? And where I thought it would be funny if she was cosplaying as Michael Myers, she has decided to appear as a character from World of Warcraft. She's going to be dressed as Jaina Proudmoore, who is an admiral and is kind of a kick-ass character. Not the most recent Shadowlands expansion, but the one before that, Battle for Azeroth. Jaina Proudmoore is very much prominent in that expansion, and she's been around a long time, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm hoping there's going to be pictures from it, because I want to see what Jamie Lee Curtis looks like as Jaina Proudmoore. But she got her costume off of Etsy. So I would have turned to one of the Hollywood costume makers myself. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And this is actually this will be the fourth wedding Jamie Lee Curtis is officiating, which puts her one ahead of me. I've done 3. So that is the news and all the stuff that popped up. But we're going to go on and talk about the second season of Pennyworth. Now, in case you haven't been following, I've been doing, it's a 2-season series. The third season is currently in production. It started off on Epix, did 2 seasons on Epix, and I don't know if it was canceled on Epix and then HBO decided to do it, or HBO, Warner Brothers decided to do it on HBO Max, or if Warner Brothers just went, well, our contract with Epix is done, let's move it to HBO Max. Either way, the 2 previous seasons were moved to HBO Max. It was announced during DC Fandom that the 3rd season was coming. And we do know the 3rd season is going to have a 5-year jump, which is going to be fascinating as hell with how season 2 ended. This series is it's a prequel series to Gotham, and it's by Danny Cannon and, oh man, I'm trying to remember the other gentleman's name. I'm usually really good at that, remembering those 2 names. Danny Cannon, and let me look it up real quick. I got to pull up that sheet anyway. Pennyworth. Nope, I misspelled that. Oh, Bruno Heller. It's created by Bruno Heller with Danny Cannon. And the 2 of them, and Bruno, they did Gotham, and a lot of the insanity that Gotham got into. The first season of Gotham was kind of normal. And then when they realized that, just doing a police procedural about Jim Gordon wasn't as interesting as digging into all the crazy people in Gotham, and they started following Corey Michael Smith's Edward Nygma and Robin Lord Taylor's Oswald Cobblepot Moore and all of those characters. That's what they did with Pennyworth. Pennyworth, the first season started off somewhat normal. And again, it's supposed to be a prequel series for Gotham, but they didn't make the main character like a younger version of Sean Pertwee, who played Alfred in Gotham. They decided to make him more like Michael Caine's version from Batman Begins. And if you remember in The Dark Knight, Michael Caine refers to the fact that his character, Alfred, says that he was in the SAS. Well, this version of Alfred, or Alfie as he's called, is a former SAS soldier, now returned from the war, and he's trying to put together his own security company. He's got two buddies working for him, and it all starts off pretty straightforward. This London is a little different than what we know. There's two extreme groups vying for attention. There is the Raven Society, which becomes the Raven Union. That is very conservative, almost Nazi-like, very right-wing fascist. And then the left-wing group is the No Name League. And they are very peace and love, but are willing to kill if they have to. And Alfred kind of gets in the middle of that, and there's gangsters he gets involved with. And it really is just kind of an interesting show, but it's very street level, and it's very 1960s. There's this vibe of like the old Avengers series with Steed and Peel. And I was really digging that. And then they go through the whole first season, and you think, okay, he's kind of working his way up. He's having interactions with the Queen, and then by the end of the season, he's sleeping with the Queen. He's doing more and more stuff for the two different. He's being pulled back and forth between the two, and it just ends up being absolutely crazy. I mean, what seems like this very simple kind of gangster spy thriller thing ends up being this alternate universe, just crazy. And it's the only word I can use for it. So Jack Bannon plays Alfred, and they, like I said, they call him Alfie, which if you watch the show or see any interviews with him, he really does sound like a young Michael Caine. The voice, the accent, the mannerisms, the movement, the look. He really could be Michael Caine's son or grandson at this point, however you want to look at that. And referring to him as Alfie is interesting because one of Michael Caine's earliest movies, the one that really put him on the map, was the movie Alfie. And in it, he plays this womanizer. And this version of Alfred is a bit of a womanizer. Like I said, he's hooking up with multiple women. At one point, he's snogging with Martha Kane, who goes on to become Martha Wayne. He hooks up with the Queen. He's got a fiancée for a while. He hooks up with somebody's wife, played by Jessica DeGao from Arrowverse. She was the Huntress in the Arrowverse. There's this barmaid singer that he hooks up with for a while. So that's like 5 different women in 2 seasons. That's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good for him. Ben Aldridge plays Thomas Wayne. Emma Pates plays Martha Kane. Paloma Faith plays this character of Bet Sykes, who is this pretty much homicidal. What's a good way to put it? A homicidal lesbian who falls in love a lot. And never with somebody who's returning the love. It's always somebody she's kidnapped and then she takes a fancy to. Her sister, Peggy, is played by Polly Walker, and she's a dominatrix. And they end up helping Lord James Harwood, played by Jason Fleming, who's the head of the Raven Society until he's tortured by the No Name League and basically loses his mind and his nose. And then ends up taking back over control later on. And it's just all this craziness. And the end of the first season ends up with this civil war going on in England. And Harwood leads now the Raven Union as they're trying to take over England. The resistance, led by the Queen and a guy named Aziz, and this crime boss, and all these less than great characters, or less than great, reputable characters, are the good guys, and Alfred just kind of floats in the middle as like Rick from Casablanca. He's got a little club he runs in the middle of the DMZ, or the neutralized zone, and he does these little side jobs. Well, he's trying to build up enough money to get himself and his mom and his two buddies out of the country and into America. And that's the whole point of this first season, is you got this war going on as resistance is holding up against the Raven Union, but it's now the English League. And it's, like I said, it's just completely crazy. And we get introduced to a former military leader of his, played by James Purefoy, plays this guy named Sully. And Sully is kind of doing the same thing that Alfred is, except he's also crossing the line and committing some crimes, stuff like that. Yeah, it's so we go through the first half of the season, and we're introduced to this guy named Salt, John Salt, and he's this conniving genius scientist who's working his way up in the Raven Society Union and forcing out anybody in his way between himself and Lord Harwood. And he's created this thing called Storm Cloud. And Storm Cloud is a chemical weapon that a mere couple drops would kill hundreds of people. A bomb made of it would wipe out all of London, killing all of the people without hurting any of the buildings or the structures. So the idea is that they could wipe out all the people and then a couple hours later march into the city and take it over and have a parade and look like they're now the official rulers of England, and now they're in charge of England. That's the plan. Except for a lot of people in the Raven Union just want to use it as a threat. They don't actually want to kill that many people because they're still the British, they're still, it's like the British don't want to kill the British, even though they're on opposite sides during the Civil War. They don't, they'd love for them just to surrender and give up and that. Well, the information about Stormcloud gets leaked to the English League by a CIA operative who has been stashed in the Raven Union, a guy named Lucius Fox. Yep, they brought in Lucius Fox for season 2, and Thomas Wayne is section chief of the CIA, so he knows he's got to get Lucius out of there, and of course he has to get Alfie and his crew to do it, and Martha's involved. And again, this is all the first half of the season, and it's still much crazier than season 1, but it's not as crazy as the end of season 2. So you've got this chemical storm cloud thing, and they rescue Lucius Fox. They get him out of there. Meanwhile, Paloma Faith's character Bet is trying to help Lord Hardwood. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't know who Paloma Faith was before watching this series. I know she's a singer and stuff like that. But,
Paloma Faith came out of that scene that kind of brought you a really young Adele, and before that, I'm going to blank on her name. She sang Rehab.
Amy
Winehouse, that kind of standards but really poppy scene in England. And man, Paloma Faith could just sing them all under the table, but because she sang about nerdy stuff, she never quite had the popularity.
Yeah,
So it was, she's the best. She's great.
Oh, and she's killing it in this series. Her character is so, like I said, she's homicidal. She'll just kill people. But at the same time, if you're nice to her, then she's like right there for you.
Her real life personality is like Noel Fielding. I don't know if you know Noel Fielding. He was in Tim and Eric's comedy show that they did on Adult Swim, and he was in The Mighty Boosh. He was Richmond in the IT Crowd.
Okay.
And he's one of the hosts on the Great British Bake Off now. But he's like a giant puppet, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's part of that scene with I'm gonna forget his name now. He was in Get Him to the Greek.
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand. So they all kind of come out of that same scene and have these real over the top cartoonish personalities.
Yeah.
They're very funny, all of them though.
Well, Paloma's character, she starts off in the early season. Her job is to kidnap Thomas Wayne. She's working for the Raven Society. And when that goes wrong, but she finds out that Alfred knows him. So she kidnaps Alfred's girlfriend, soon to be fiancée. And while holding her, she falls in love with Alfred's girlfriend and thinks there's a real relationship. And then when Alfred's girlfriend gets killed, she ends up teaming with Alfred to catch the killer and saves Alfred at one point from the police. And she keeps popping back up in the strangest ways. And it's like in one of the later episodes of season 2, the Alfred, Thomas, Lucius, and Davy Boy all get captured by the Ravens Union. And she's just wandering through their base doing something completely different, ducks in to hide from guards, sees them there and goes, "Oh, hey, you're Esme's boy." Yeah. And he looks up and goes, Esme would want you to free us if she was here. And she's like, "Huh. Yeah, you're right." And she lets them out. It's just, her character is super, super strange, but so much fun, and she'll just walk up and kill somebody, like just snap their neck. And the girl she's got right now doesn't want her to be violent. So she tries to talk her out of doing all the violent stuff. And it's just such an odd character, but she's so much fun. All right. We are a little over the halfway point of the show. Let's take a quick break. We will come back and talk more about season 2 and where it wraps up, how it goes absolutely crazy at the end, and what season 3 might be. So we'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We are talking about Season 2 of Pennyworth, but before we go any further, hey, Kyle, do we still got the comic covers loaded up from last night? Kyle may have run away.
No, it just helps if I click the right buttons. We do not.
Oh, okay. Because I was just going to hype a couple new books coming out this week. That
I can show the Count Crowley video, though.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, well, I was unprepared. You got to give me just a second.
All right. Count Crowley is a book created by David S. Malchian. There's a new issue 1 coming out this week. It's tied into the old, like, Elvira weekend host, horror host type of trope. And David S. Malchian has put together a trailer that is a lot of fun. It's one of a couple books that I'm recommending, number 1 for this week. Another one is Armor Clad from Valiant, which is really good. It's a new property from them, so you don't have to have read any other Valiant book. It's got kind of a Starship Troopers vibe to it. So that's another good book this week. What was the third one? There was another one.
We Have Demons?
We Have Demons. Yes, this is coming from Dark Horse. It's Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. They've done it through Comixology. It's a Comixology book, but it's being printed by Dark Horse. Number 1's in shops this week. So those are 3 number 1s that I do recommend this week. All are really good. The We Are Demons, a lot of exposition, but it's a really good book, and the artwork is gorgeous. The Count Crowley is just a ton of fun, and Armor Clads is a really neat and new start into a sci-fi series.
All right, here's the trailer.
All right.
How did it come to this? I used to be a legend. Oh! Forgot my teeth. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Dr. Fearless. Now, before we get back to tonight's creature feature, we have a word from our sponsor. I am smiling. My dear fiends, does your cat's litter box stink like the dead? Are ghastly smells haunting your house? Dr. Fearless prescribes Mew Mew Fresh Litter, guaranteed to make those erroneous odors rest in peace. Isn't that right, Bubblegum?
I like how it keeps
What do
cutting
you
back.
have there, Bubblegum? Is that what I think it is? Boils and ghouls, the wait is finally over. Bubblegum has just informed me that our favorite monster hunter, Jerry Barkman, is now back. Look, Jerry's still wrestling with her inner demons. She's also bracing to do battle with a procession of werewolves, bloodless giants, dismembered zombies, and vengeful vampires. Will her past come back to haunt her? Or will she unearth the truth, slay the beasts, and save the world? It's all in a night's work for Beloit, Missouri's KSKB TV's top-rated horror hostess. Prepare yourselves for the return of Count Crowley, amateur midnight monster hunter. Coming soon to a comic shop near you. You know, that's a good comic book right there, Count Crowley. That's a good one. You remember that one? Written by that Dalmatian guy? What's his name? Dalmatian? What a weird name. Right, that's Malchian, of course, and the art by Lucas Kettner. They're fans of my show. No, they are. They're fans of the show, you guys. I know they are. I heard it. I saw it online somewhere.
Okay, you guys should pick up that just for him doing that promo. But it's a fun book. I've read it. It's really cool. And
When we first saw that promo,
mhm.
I'm going, I know that guy from somewhere. And I'm trying to figure it out. And by the time the promo was over, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's Polka Dot Man from Suicide Squad. Like I'd put it together. Jen texts me and goes, I wonder who that actor was and if we could get him to do stuff for the experience. And I go, I'm pretty sure he's busy. And she goes, how do you know? I go, well, he just was in the Suicide Squad. And, you know, I started running down. He's got a whole bunch of other stuff coming out. And she goes, oh, who was it? I go, David Desmelchin. She goes, oh my gosh. Okay.
You guys didn't recognize him, really?
I recognized him, but I couldn't, like, it didn't immediately come to me that that's David that's him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I know that face. I've seen him in something. Or I go, that's the creator of that book. I've seen him at Comic-Con or so. Like, my brain starts going through the Rolodex.
Yeah.
And it just took me a couple of seconds.
For me, as soon as I saw him and he was doing the accent, I thought of him in Ant-Man.
Right.
Because in Ant-Man, he's got a similar accent from nobody. And it wasn't supposed, the character wasn't supposed to have an accent. He just decided to do it.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I really like him as an actor, but it's one of those things. It's like it just took me a second, and I felt dumb about it. Yeah. By the way, he has he's the lead in an adaptation of Stephen King's The Boogeyman. It's coming out hopefully next year.
Cool.
That has me very excited.
Oh yeah, but it's a good book. So if you guys are in shops, Count Crowley, Armorclads, we have Demons. Those are the three I recommend. I'd recommend Marvel and DC books, but they don't send them to me. So if you're listening, Marvel or DC, you can send me your books. I'll talk about them. But, all right, let's get back to Pennyworth. So the second season takes a twist about halfway through. The whole thing is he's trying to get enough money to get to America, to get out of the country. He doesn't want to be part of the resistance. He just wants to get out. He wants to get his mom and get out. Mind you, he's reeling because he fought against the Raven Society and the Raven Union. And in the first season, he defeated them. They got captured. And it turns out they had a backup plan about the butler for one of these lords had a bomb, and he was going to blow up this dinner party that had the Queen and most of Parliament. And the problem is, though, that butler was Alfred's dad, Arthur. And he discovered it just before it happened, and he raced there and ended up having to kill his own dad, shooting his own dad. And then his dad still blew up things. And Alfred was able to save the Queen. And that was the end of season 1. And then season 2 started a year later. And then we find out that the Raven Union had taken over and was starting to take over the country. And the Queen was leading this small resistant group. And so basically, season 2 was very different from season 1. Well, about halfway through, Alfie and Dave Boy. Now, Baza gets killed early on. So it's just the two of them now. And they get pulled into their former commander's group to do jobs with him, which is Colonel Gulliver Troy. And Troy's wife, played by Jessica DeGao, comes on to Alfie. And, of course, Alfie doesn't really say no much. So he ends up hooking up with her, which, of course, Troy finds out and is going to kill him. And he's scrambling now to get another seat on the plane to America for her so that Troy doesn't kill her. And the whole thing is about that. And they go and they save Lucius Fox. And all of this stuff is going on. And we finally get to the point where he convinces his mother to go with them to America. They're at the plane. Meanwhile, Thomas and Martha have gotten romantically involved, even though they've hated each other through most of this. And Martha is pregnant. So Thomas is trying to get Martha onto the plane, along with himself and Lucius, to go to America, to get out of there before the Raven Union decides to use Stormcloud. That's the whole thing. They want to get out of there. And that's when everything changes, because Alfie decides he can't go. He needs to stay and fight for something. This is his home. But he puts her on the plane, Troy's wife, and his mom and Davy Boy stay. Well, Martha decides she's not leaving because she wants to fight for the country. Now, so Thomas can't go. And Lucius decides to stay because he may be the only one who can dispose of the bomb if they can get their hands on it. So all these people who spend most of this thing trying to get out of London decide to stay. And the first thing Alfie decides he has to do, though, is he has to resolve his situation with his old commander. So he goes to the guy's house thinking they're going to have a shootout to see who wins. If he lives, great. If he dies, it's over anyway. But of course, Gully has his other people around and get the drop on Alfie. And they take him out to the woods and stab him, and they make him run off, and they're going to hunt him. Or Gully's going to hunt him. So you got that whole thing going on. And, meanwhile, Bet and Peg have decided they're going to break into the Raven Society and try to rescue the former Harwood's former assistant, Miss Gout, Madam Gout. So you got all this going on. Well, of course, Alfie stops Troy. Well, we think he kills Troy. But he's wounded, and Davy Boy and his mom find him and bring him back home. And they patch him up. And, of course, Thomas shows up with Lucius and Martha, and they've got this plan. And the plan is for Davy Boy, Thomas, Lucius, and Alfie to just drive in to the Raven Union, steal Stormcloud, and escape. Because the CIA has decided they're going to let things happen. They're not going to stop Stormcloud because Stormcloud will bring an end to the Civil War, and then things will get back to normal, And the CIA likes calm. So they're not helping the Raven Union, but they're not stopping them either. And once the Raven Union takes full control, they'll be allies. So Thomas, being the section head of the CIA, can easily get in. And bringing back their missing scientist, Lucius, with these other two people. Well, they get in, of course, get captured. So all this craziness is going on. And they take Alfie away from everybody else to interrogate him. And they end up bringing in Alfie's dad. So the guy that we've believed has been dead since the end of season 1 shows up. But he looks like Commander Pike in the Menagerie. He's got breathing things, and he's in a wheelchair, and and he's all jacked up. And of course, we don't trust him because he's a lifer for the Raven Union, but he ends up helping Alfie and them escape with Stormcloud. And of course, Raven Union told the English League they had until a certain time to surrender, or they were going to blow up the city with the Stormcloud, or kill everybody with Stormcloud. And they think, well, we've got Stormcloud, so they get out of there. But the problem is Stormcloud's a fake. And Commander Salt knew it, and he didn't want the English League to surrender. He wanted to be able to kill them all with a clean conscience because he wanted to use Stormcloud. And he wanted, so that the rest of the world wouldn't look bad on them. So when they didn't surrender, he's going to use Stormcloud. And that's where things get even crazier, because it turns out Stormcloud is already in London, and they're having to search for it. Oh, and Troy turns out not to be dead. And he comes busting in trying to find Alfie. And when he can't find him, he ends up discovering what's going on with the real Stormcloud. And then when they discover where Stormcloud is, they're trying to disarm it. At the same time, Bet and Peggy and Gaunt are attacking Salt. So you've got this weird thing going on where Salt's trying to hit the button to blow up London or to set off the chemical weapon. And they're trying to deactivate it. And it starts to go off. And that's when the craziest thing of all happens. Commander Gulliver Troy decides he's going to swallow the bomb. It's about this big, like a big capsule, but good size. And he thinks that if it's inside of him, then maybe his body would contain the chemical gas. Lucius, of course, goes, no, that doesn't work. Science doesn't work like that. But he does it anyway because Alfie was going to do that. That was Alfie's original plan. And Troy goes, no, I'm the commanding officer. I'm going to do it. If anybody's going to be the hero here, it's me. And he takes it and he swallows it. And kind of turns blue when it goes off. And then dies. Or we think he's dead. And they put him in a van, and they're going to take him off. And suddenly the van starts quivering and shaking, and you see this blue cloud releasing in the van. And Alfie starts looking over at it, and Lucius like, I wouldn't do that. And he opened, So now we're like, what the hell's going on here? So then they jump 6 months. Salt's dead. Gaunt is back in charge of the Raven Union, and they're still moving in, but now they're attacking London with the actual army, and they're fighting. And we switch to Bet is now and her girlfriend are part of a resistance group in London fighting against the Raven Union's tanks. And they've called for backup. And there's this big fight scene. And then suddenly a bread truck shows up. And Alfie and Davy Boy get out. And she's like, are you the backup? And he's like, yeah, backup's here. Oh, no, we've got this. No problem. And again, this has been somewhat grounded but crazy series. They open the back doors of the bread truck. And out steps Gulliver Troy. Skin blue, looking like he's in almost a Mr. Freeze costume. Except instead of a helmet, he's wearing a beret, but he's in an armored battle suit like thing with tubes on it with the blue goo that he was affected with from Stormcloud. And he steps out and he puts out his hands and starts firing off this chemical. Way more chemical than was in the little container. And he's firing it out and killing the bad guys, or the enemy. And that's where the series ends, or the season ends. With this suddenly superhero villain character, superpowered character. Maybe they call him Stormcloud, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's like a version of Mr. Freeze, but it's a chemical thing, and it's so out of left field. Everything from the moment he swallowed the bomb to him coming out of the back of the truck was so bizarre that everything else in the regular, everything else in the series became grounded. It was like, no, all of that made perfect sense. This is the crazy part now. So season 3, we know that Jack Bannon is back and Ben Aldrich and Emma Patz. So and Martha gives birth to her child, a girl. So it's not Bruce. Again, the show is just making a lot of left turns, going directions. Every time you think someone's dead, they come back. His dad's dead. Nope. Oh, Gulliver Troy is dead. Nope. And even the people who do die, they come back as ghosts that pop up and kind of taunt Alfie for the things he's doing. Baza and his dad used to pop back up. And this guy, Spanish was his name. He was a soldier. Honestly, this is one of the craziest shows on the air. And the fact that we're going to get a 5-year time jump into season 3, we assume the Civil War is over, but did the Raven Union win? Did the English League take back control? Is Alfie back with the Sandra the singer? Is he hooked up with the Troy's wife? Is he suddenly the King of England and because he hooked back up with the Queen? All of that is possible with this show. And again, 5-year time jump. Are they in America? Are they still in London? I honestly do not know what we're going to get. And we don't know if somebody like James Purefoy is back. So if that whatever character he became at the end there, that might be back, or that might just, yeah, we did that at the end. We thought we were canceled. But turns out we were coming back, so we just won't mention that character. I could see them doing that. It's a fun, crazy show. It's well worth watching. The acting is really good. The characters are good. They take the piss out of a lot of things. And I say that because the Queen says that at one point during the show. They have a lot of fun with the Queen. They have a lot of fun with all the characters. Aleister Crowley is a recurring character. It's really bizarre, but it's fun. So they're saying that season 3 will start sometime this year. So stick around for it. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. Tomorrow I have a guest, Pat Shand from, oh God, he's written a lot of things, but back in my Zenoscope days, Pat and I used to work together. He's got a bunch of stuff coming up. So we're going to just spend the hour talking, catching up. So join us. Yes, sir.
Pat may be most famous from Raven Gregory's Facebook posts.
I don't necessarily think that's true, but I understand where you're coming from.
It seems like every post Raven makes, Pat's got a good zippy comeback.
Yes, he does. So stick around for Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. Get in on that CGC graded Moon Knight or Marvel Spotlight 28. That's going to be the big one in that show. So stick around for that. I will be back tomorrow with Pat Shand. Have a great night. See you later here on The Experience. Good night, everybody.